Discover the shocking truth, Elizabeth I's devastating secrets that haunt history forever. In the dim corridors of history, a veil of shadows hides a past so twisted that the very foundations of England tremble. Whispers of betrayal and dark magic cling to the air like the damp fog that blankets London at dawn. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, portrayed as the noble defender of England, harbored secrets so profound they could unravel the fabric of her reign. What if her staunch facade was merely a mask for a life steeped in grief, betrayal, and unspeakable horror? Picture the scene, a grand banquet at Elizabeth's court, laughter ringing through the hall, and yet, lurking beneath the surface, a jagged tension cuts through the merriment like a bolt of lightning. Just days prior, a loyal advisor, found dead, his lifeless eyes wide in terror, whispered of conspiracies that burrowed deep into the heart of her trusted circle. Was it poison? Or had the whispers of her enemies forged a weapon far more insidious? As the rumors swirled, so did another chilling truth. Elizabeth's obsession with power drew her to dark rituals that promised eternal life, a desperate quest to cling to youth yet devoid of happiness. Was this the cost of her unyielding ambition? The gleam of her crown became a noose, tightening around her neck, squeezing out the breath of those loyal to her. One by one, they vanished into the night, leaving behind only a heartbeat of fear. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air grew thicker as Elizabeth, cloaked in her royal garb, faced a decision that would send shockwaves through her kingdom. As her candles flickered dimly in the cold air, she realized the lengths she must go to protect her throne. But what shadows lurked in her own heart? With trust crumbling like ancient stone, could Elizabeth truly discern friend from foe? The clock of destiny ticked louder, echoing like a war drum, and whispers grew into roars. What secrets lay beyond the velvet curtain, waiting to break free and haunt history forever? The banquet hall was alive with the music of celebration, but Elizabeth's heart felt like ice, cold and heavy in her chest. She smiled at her guests, laughter spilling from her lips, even as dread gnawed at her insides. Courtiers twirled, dancing like shadows on the walls, yet they couldn't escape her piercing gaze. Every smile felt like a mask, and behind those gilded faces, truths twisted and turned like snakes, waiting to strike. Days slipped by like quicksand. The throne room echoed with discontent, a council meeting turned into a battlefield, accusations flying like daggers. Your Majesty, men have died for less than a mere glance of disloyalty. Lord Howard's voice boomed, fingers clutching a scroll. The nobles, faces drawn tight, glanced at one another. A web of suspicion was being spun. Each man, each woman, could be a spy or worse, an assassin lurking in the shadows. But was Howard one of them? Was he playing her like a pawn? Whispers of dark magic intensified, creeping into her thoughts like a fog seeping through the cracks of an ancient fortress. They spoke of a sorceress, a woman cloaked in secrets, wielding power too formidable for the likes of men. Elizabeth's mind raced, memories of long-forgotten incantations bubbling to the surface. Could her desperation for eternal glory have conjured such darkness? The very rituals that promised youth were now tainted, turning against her like a viper. Distrust hung thick in the air, and sleep eluded her. On a sleepless night, Elizabeth found herself drawn to the library, dimly lit by flickering candles. There, ancient tomes lay scattered, words dripped in forgotten blood and treachery. Amid these dusty pages, she uncovered a passage hinting at an amulet possessing the power to protect her from betrayals. But at what cost? Was she willing to bargain her soul for a crown? The thought shook her to the core. A sudden knock shattered her thoughts. The door creaked open to reveal a figure cloaked in shadow, the sorceress herself, or so Elizabeth believed. Her breath hung suspended in the air, laden with a strange allure. "Your Majesty," the sorceress whispered, her voice like silk and smoke. "I come with a warning but also with the means to secure your reign." Fear clawed at Elizabeth's throat. "What do you know of my enemies?" The need for control surged within her, pulsing dangerously against her ribs. "I know the truths you have buried so deep," the sorceress replied, stepping closer, her eyes glinting with a mix of mischief and power. "But I ask you this, are you prepared for the price?" Elizabeth stared into the darkness within those eyes and saw her own reflection staring back, filled with trembling resolve. "Tell me the price," she demanded, her voice strained yet hopeful. As the sorceress began to speak, the candle flame flickered violently, as if warning them both. Outside, the wind howled, carrying with it the whispers of those watching, waiting. In that moment, Elizabeth faced the truth. Power came with perilous stitches, and she was tangled in a tapestry of bloodshed and magic. The stakes had never been higher. What was the price of loyalty when betrayal loomed like a specter at the door? Desperation clawed at her heart, but a new path shimmered dark, twisted, and filled with potential. What would she sacrifice to hold on to her crown? And as she wrestled with her demons, a knock echoed again, a different knock this time, one that would change everything. Who dared interrupt such perilous negotiations? The door swung open, revealing a breathless servant, his face pale as if he had just seen a ghost. "Your Majesty!" he gasped, his voice trembling. "It's Lord Howard, he has been attacked." Elizabeth's heart raced. Her mind spun wildly, juggling the weight of the sorceress's words and the sudden panic clawing at her. Howard had been her most vocal opponent, yet a part of her had almost counted on his loyalty if only to cement her own rule. "What happened?" she demanded, stepping forward, the sorceress's dark presence forgotten for a moment. "He lies unconscious in the courtyard, surrounded by guards. They say it was a dagger, poisoned." The servant's eyes darted to the sorceress, fear mixing with confusion. "It's chaos out there, Your Majesty. Bring me to him," Elizabeth commanded, the urgency in her voice overpowering her lingering fear. With the sorceress following closely, she rushed out of the library, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The hallway felt alive, tapestries fluttering as the gusts of an unwelcoming storm flowed through the castle. An eerie silence enveloped the courtyard as Elizabeth stepped outside, her heart pounding. In the center, surrounded by a huddle of anxious guards, lay Lord Howard, his pale face aglow under the cold moonlight. A dagger protruded from his side, dripping with malevolence. "Stand back," Elizabeth ordered, pushing through the guards. The sight was gut-wrenching, a man known for his fierce words now rendered silent, his life hanging by a thread. With shaking hands, she knelt beside him. "Howard, speak to me." As she laid her palm on his forehead, a sudden shudder passed through him, causing the dagger to tremble. The world around her fell away, and for a heartbeat, Elizabeth was lost in the grasp of her own memories and fears. She thought of the sorceress's warning. Could this have been part of the price? Majesty Howard's eyes fluttered open. Pain twisted his features, but within them lay desperation. "They're coming for you, the others, they won't stop." "What do you mean?" Her voice rose, echoing against the stone walls, drawing the attention of onlookers. "Who has attacked you?" "They were the faces of friends." His voice trailed off into a harsh cough, blood staining his lips. "Trust no one." Just as she leaned in closer, trying to catch each frail whisper, the sorceress stepped beside her, her presence commanding. "The amulet, the ritual must be done to bind loyalty." Elizabeth clenched her fists. Loyalty was an illusion, and betrayal was lurking even among her guards. "Not now," she snapped, her focus returning to Howard, whose eyes grew weak. "Stay with me." But the dimming light in his eyes struck a dagger through her heart. The weight of his knowledge felt like a curse. A distant shout jolted her from despair, "Your Majesty! We must move." The air thickened with urgency. Elizabeth rose to her feet, surveying the crowd, feeling the insidious glances of her own court. You. Find the one responsible. She commanded, pointing fiercely at a guard whose demeanor shifted nervously. Fear had woven its way into the very core of her realm, turning allies into enemies. The sorceress lingered near the shadows, a hawk poised to strike at any moment. Not everyone can be saved, she murmured, her breath swirling like mist. As chaos erupted around her, Elizabeth realized she was at a tipping point. Would loyalty be forged from bloodshed? The crown felt heavier than ever, its weight suffocating, threatening to crush her beneath the demands of her throne. And just as Elizabeth's mind began to grasp this new reality, a figure slipped into the shadows of the courtyard hunched and cloaked. She couldn't see who it was, but one thing was certain, someone was watching, waiting, biding their time. What secrets did this figure hold? Were they friend or foe? Elizabeth's breath hitched as she locked eyes with the cloaked figure, heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. Shadows danced around the newcomer, veiling their features, but the air crackled with an unsettling tension. The murmurs from the guards rose like a tide, underscoring her rising dread. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp as steel. The figure shifted but remained silent, an ominous weight pressing down on the courtyard. Elizabeth's instincts flared, she needed to know if they were an ally or part of the growing conspiracy against her. "Your Majesty!" one of the guards shouted, breaking her focus. "We can't be out here much longer. We need to secure the castle." Panic flickered in the crowd like a wild flame, and Elizabeth felt the fear settling like a lead blanket over her shoulders. She grasped the dagger still buried in Howard, the source of so much pain. Its poison seeped into the earth, whispering secrets that belonged to the shadows. Every second passed with agonizing slowness. "Stand your ground!" Elizabeth shouted, trying to rally her loyalists. "No one is leaving this courtyard until we know the truth." The cloaked figure finally stepped forward. A glint of metal caught the moonlight, revealing a blade that resembled the one lodged in Howard's side. Elizabeth straightened, heart racing. "You. Identify yourself." The figure pulled down their hood, and Elizabeth gasped. The familiar face beneath was one she had trusted, one that she could never conceive of being involved in treachery. Lady Margaret, a confidant, a friend. But her eyes burned with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "Elizabeth," Margaret said, voice even but laced with urgency. "We need to talk now." "What have you done?" Elizabeth demanded, incredulity mixing with betrayal. "You stand before me cloaked in deceit while Howard lies dying." "It's not what you think," Margaret replied, glancing at the guards encroaching from all sides, concern flashing in her eyes. "I came to warn you, not to harm you. There are forces at play that are far beyond our control." "Who attacked Howard?" Elizabeth pressed, feeling her composure slipping as frustration fed her anger. "What do you know?" Margaret stepped closer, lowering her voice. "There are betrayals lurking in the walls, people you believed could never turn against you. A pact has been made by those you trust most." Chills raced down Elizabeth's spine. The fragments of Howard's last words echoed in her mind, friends wearing masks of loyalty. Her throat tightened, the weight of betrayal suffocating. "Enough!" Elizabeth cried, taking a step back, heart battling between disbelief and devastation. "You must tell me everything." But before Margaret could respond, another shout came from the shadows. "Your Majesty!" The shout was cut short by a heavy crash behind the gates, followed by the sounds of clattering armor. Panic spread like wildfire. "They're here!" A guard yelled, eyes wide with horror. Voices screamed through the courtyard as figures emerged from the darkness, faces obscured by masks. They charged forth, a surge of hostility that sent her heart plummeting. Elizabeth instinctively drew away from the chaos, grasping for a way to control the rushing tide before her. "Margaret!" she shouted, adrenaline pumping. "We need to," but her voice was drowned out by the pandemonium erupting all around. Steel clashed against steel. The air was thick with shouts and cries of alarm, each moment fracturing Elizabeth's already tenuous grasp on her fate. Amid the chaos, she caught a glimpse of movement. A figure was retreating into the shadows, the source of the attack. Panic twisted in her gut. Could this be the rendezvous of betrayal she feared? After them, she commanded, pointing toward the fleeing figure, her resolve hardening. They couldn't let this chance escape. We unravel this tonight. But as Elizabeth surged forward, haunted by the ghosts of those once trusted, the true implications began to solidify around her. Danger lurked in every corner, shifting like shadows. Who would she face next? Would the truth break her? Or save her? The coming clash promised not just chaos, but revelation. Elizabeth fought through the chaos, her heart racing, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate need for answers. The masked figures swarmed like locusts, their blades gleaming under the dim moonlight, striking out in a precise rhythm that spoke of deep coordination. She could just make out their shapes, familiar outlines twisted into terrifying forms by the power of fear. "Form a line," she ordered, trying to project authority over the rising panic. Her guards, loyal and brave, strained to follow her command amidst the encroaching threat. But the attackers were relentless, a surge of dark intent pouring into the courtyard with a singular purpose to silence her once and for all. Elizabeth's gaze darted back to Margaret, the betrayal still raw and festering. "You're sure about this?" "I didn't know until it was too late," Margaret yelled over the din, urgency derailing her composure. "You must trust me now. Follow me. We can escape through the chapel doors." The chapel. A sudden flash of hope ignited in her chest. It had always been her sanctuary, a space for reflection and prayer. There, she forged bonds, whispered secrets, and sought solace. Did it still hold refuge? "Let us move," Elizabeth shouted, slicing through the chaos with her voice. "Regroup at the chapel." With a fierce scream, she willed her legs to follow her mind. All around her, men and women, once devoted to her, became shadows of their former selves, lashing out in a fight against fate. But Elizabeth could not let fear paralyze her. She blocked out the screams for help, the sickening thud of swords clashing. Her focus was the chapel. "Margaret!" she called, turning to catch up. The friend-turned-foe wove effortlessly through the mass of fighting bodies. "Stay close." As they darted toward the ancient wooden doors of the chapel, Elizabeth saw an opening, a sliver of space between the fighting, as if the dark forces were parting for her, almost like fate itself guiding her way. The moment felt surreal, like stepping through a thin veil separating nightmare from reality. With a forceful push, the doors creaked open, revealing the familiar warmth of candlelight. But the sanctuary was not alone. A figure loomed inside. Elizabeth's breath caught, tall, broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the shadow of a cowl. "Who dares defile this sacred ground?" the figure thundered, voice echoing like a clap of doom across the hallowed hall. "Stand back," Elizabeth warned, feeling every nerve spark with fear. She could barely see the figure's eyes, but she sensed the potential for more betrayal. "We, your majesty," the figure responded, voice chillingly calm, "you should not have come here. They're not the only ones seeking you." A chill ran down her spine. What did he mean by not the only ones? Had she truly stepped into a den of wolves? Just then, another clamoring erupted outside, desperation clawing at the already fraught atmosphere. Shadows surged in again, this time accompanied by the unmistakable sounds of wood splintering. "Hide!" Margaret hissed. Panic flooded her words, urgency rising like a fever-esque grip. But hiding wasn't an option for Elizabeth. She had come to reclaim her throne, her people, her life. "All of you outside!" The cloaked figure boomed, forcing the guards back as the masked figures surged toward them. Elizabeth's heart raced. This stranger wielded power she did not understand, yet time was running out. "Tell me who you are," she demanded, resolve igniting within her again. You're putting us all at risk. As the first masked attacker broke through the chapel threshold, a sharp cry rang out. Who would fall tonight? The figure in front of her remained silent, eyes locked on the new threat, and in that moment, with danger closing in, Elizabeth understood that everything was about to change. Choices forged in the heat of battle would lead into unknown paths, sowing seeds for more lies and hidden truths yet to surface. Elizabeth, the figure urged, voice low and resonant, you must listen. If you're to survive this night, trust may no longer be enough. The walls closed in. Her breath came in. Quick gasps as fear wrestled with desperation. Could she trust this looming figure before her? The dance of betrayal was only just beginning, and outside, the darkness waited with arms wide open. What would it consume next? The cloaked figure surged forward, blocking the oncoming threat with a fierce urgency. Elizabeth's heart hammered in her chest. Each clash of steel echoed like thunder in the small chapel, mixing with the stench of sweat and fear. She tried to focus on the figure's face, but shadows danced around them, warping his features. Stay behind me, he commanded. What are you? Elizabeth pressed, her voice rising above the chaos. The masked figures swarmed like a tidal wave, relentless and hungry. I am your last hope, he replied, his tone grave. As his words settled in the air, the first attacker lunged at him, a flash of steel aimed at the figure's throat. But with fluid grace, he twisted aside, and the attacker stumbled into the wooden pews, crashing through them with a sickening thud. Elizabeth's breath caught. This man was no ordinary ally. Your Majesty, move! Margaret screamed, pulling Elizabeth aside as another attacker burst through, slashing wildly. Elizabeth felt the air shift as the figure intercepted the blow, his body taking the hit instead of hers. No! She cried out, feeling a stab of fear pierce her resolve. Go! He grunted, pushing her forward with a fierce shove. They darted deeper into the chapel, the flickering candles casting frantic shadows that danced on the stained glass windows. Every instinct told her to flee, yet curiosity nagged at her. What were the truths buried in her past? Could this man, this enigmatic protector, truly be part of the answer? It won't hold them for long. He shouted, glancing back at the surging tide of attackers. You must listen. Your family's legacy is murkier than you think. There's a reason they're hunting you. Elizabeth's mind spun. The weight of his words pressed down on her, making her heart race faster. Could her lineage be tainted? What secrets had been kept from her? Outside, the sounds of battle escalated. The frantic shouts of her guards grew weaker, punctuated by the screams of those caught in the crossfire. She latched onto that panic, fueling her own. Why are you telling me this now? She yelled back, almost desperate. What do you know that I don't? I know that the truth could destroy you, he replied, breathless again as he fought off yet another attacker who lunged toward her. Behind them, more figures crashed into the chapel, tearing at the fragile peace of the sanctuary. The future held a choice, and Elizabeth could feel it still, tied to the shadows that lurked just outside the doors. Then what do I need to do? She demanded, urgency burning in her chest. Trust yourself, Elizabeth. He shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. You were born for this. But the truths you uncover will test your very soul. Struggling to comprehend his ominous words, Elizabeth found herself teetering on the edge between fear and determination. At any moment, her world could shatter. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye. A figure cloaked in black surged through the entrance, their intent clear in the lethal way they brandished their weapon. Without thinking, Elizabeth raised her sword, preparing to fight. But before she could react, the figure in front of her stepped in, a desperate shout escaping his lips as a blade glimmered. A deafening silence fell over the chapel as everyone turned to see what would happen next. Elizabeth! The cloaked figure called out, pain seeping into his voice. You must make a choice to uncover the darkness or accept your fate. Panic and resolve coursed through her veins. Could she brave the unknown? Did she dare step into a truth that threatened to unravel everything? The masked figures thronged closer, filling the chapel with a hungry restlessness. Her breath quickened. Elizabeth faced the darkness beyond the chapel doors, where her future lay shrouded in shadows. Would she embrace the truth waiting for her? Something critical hung in the air, waiting to be revealed, and all the while, the darkness pressed on her. What would she choose? The world around Elizabeth froze, suspended in that fractured moment. The weight of his words pressed against her chest, squeezing out the breath she barely had left. Shadows danced where the sunlight should break through, taunting her with the possibilities of a fate she dared not explore. The cloaked figure staggered before her, clutching at his side where the strike had landed. The air shifted thick with uncertainty and despair while chaos unfolded just steps away. The attackers were closing in, relentless and insatiable. Elizabeth's heart pumped wildly, a drum-like intensity echoing the beating of her thoughts. Choose. The figure gasped, his voice strained. He cast a desperate glance toward the door, knowing they were out of time. Elizabeth's grip tightened around the hilt of her sword, the cool metal biting into her palm. Despite the fear threatening to swallow her whole, she felt something stirring deep within her, an unsettling mixture of anger and determination. What was her legacy? Who were these attackers? And why was she being hunted? The question spiraled wildly, but one truth anchored her: she couldn't let him fall. Not now. With a fierce cry, she surged forward. Get away from him. She swung her sword, aiming for the nearest cloaked figure, fury igniting her movements. The blade met flesh, and the attacker crumpled, his mask slipping away, revealing a face contorted with rage. Relief mingled with dread as she recognized him, one of her former guards, twisted by whatever darkness lurked in the shadows. Elizabeth, he sputtered, eyes wide with disbelief and betrayal. You should not be fighting us. An unsettled feeling twisted in her gut. What are you talking about? She demanded. Why are you doing this? Before he could respond, another figure lunged at her from the side. The cloak caught her in a tangle, and with a gasp, Elizabeth felt herself pulled down, the cold stone beneath her hard against her back. The sword flew from her grasp, landing out of reach. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but the urge to fight was stronger. Stop! The familiar voice of Margaret broke through the chaos, slicing through her fog of panic. She barreled into the fray, knocking the assailant off balance. Get up! We need you! Summoning her strength, Elizabeth rolled to the side, scrambling to her feet. Her eyes fell on the cloaked figure, still reeling from his injury but unwavering in his resolve. Elizabeth! You are stronger than this. Embrace what you are. He shouted, gritting his teeth against the pain. Fortified by his words, her breath steadied. What do I need to do? She yelled back, eyes blazing with determination. He gestured toward the back of the chapel, toward the altar where a strange, shimmering light pulsed. The truth is there. It will guide you. With a nod that sealed her decision, Elizabeth carved her way through the mob, ducking and weaving as she fought to the altar. Every step sent adrenaline surging through her, a wildfire spreading fierce and untamed. But just as she reached the glowing light, a scream erupted from Margaret. Elizabeth turned, eyes wide, just in time to see the cloaked figure, her protector, topple forward, blood pooling beneath him like a dark promise of despair. No! She screamed, heart shattering. The darkness surged closer, and with it came chaos. As shadows swallowed the sanctuary, Elizabeth made a vow etched in the core of her being. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. But the question twisted in her mind as uncertainty flooded over her again: would the truth save her or destroy her completely? She hesitated, sensing the weight of what came next would tip the scales of destiny. With the chapel now suffocated in gloom and fears realized, what awaited Elizabeth in the heart of that mysterious light? Would she have the courage to step into it and face the unknown shadows of her lineage? Elizabeth's heart raced as she stared at the pulsating light, its warmth beckoning like a siren through the encroaching darkness. But behind her, chaos erupted anew. The sound of fists against flesh, screams of betrayal, and the scuffle of boots against stone filled her ears, drowning out all logic. She couldn't think about the cloaked figure lying lifeless, she couldn't lose herself to grief, not now. The air thickened with despair, each breath a struggle, each heartbeat a reminder of her stakes. Shadows closed in, unnerving figures swirling like phantoms from her worst nightmares. But inside that flickering glow, something called to her. It wasn't just light, it felt like a promise. Forced to choose in this relentless battle, she took a step toward the altar, the sensation of her destiny tingling beneath her skin. "Elizabeth!" Margaret screamed, her voice laced with urgency. Elizabeth felt a stab of guilt, but the path was clear. "You have to get us out of here." A chilling realization crept in. What if this light betrayed her? What if the truth was more damning than she'd ever imagined? She glanced back at Margaret, her friend's face twisted with fear and doubt, and found her resolve hardening. With a cry that roared from deep within, she surged forward, leaving the battle to weave through the onslaught. Every ounce of her being propelled her toward the light. Disparate threads of determination knitted a tapestry of urgency. She could feel the attackers close behind, their malevolent presence hanging heavy. "Reach for it," a voice whispered, the tone so familiar it quickened her pulse. What was it? A memory, a fragment of her past floating in the void? She pressed on, keeping her eyes on the altar, where the light seemed to pulse with life. Suddenly, a figure surged forward, another cloaked assailant. He lunged at her, but in that fleeting moment, Elizabeth's instinct kicked in. She sidestepped gracefully, the echo of her training grounding her. She had to keep moving. There was no room for doubt or hesitation. With outstretched fingers, she made contact with the light. An electric shock coursed through her, igniting every nerve ending. The chapel shifted, reality warping like a dream unraveling. Images flooded her mind, glimpses of her ancestors, shadows cast across history. Betrayals, loyalties, secrets hidden beneath layers of time. "What is this?" she whispered, overwhelmed. "Your legacy," the voice from the light answered, soft yet insistent. "You were born to face this darkness. To own it." But before she could absorb that revelation, the ground trembled violently beneath her. The shadows twisted with rage, as if the very darkness resented her claim to the light. The chapel walls began to crack, fissures weaving like veins through stone. "Elizabeth!" Margaret's voice was panicked now, echoing like a distant plea. "We need you." The walls thudded as if beating against her resolve. The shadows surged forward, relentless, wrapping around her like serpentine bands, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "No!" She thrust her hands toward the light, feeling it pulse against her palms. "I want to let this darkness take us." With a blinding flash, she found herself thrust backward, colliding with a force unseen. A whirlwind of energy enveloped her, blinding her senses. As clarity slowly returned, she found herself standing, the glow still pulsating, but her surroundings had shifted. The chapel looked the same, yet everything felt altered, charged with a new energy, the air buzzing and thick. Margaret was beside her, her face pale but resolute. "I don't know how much longer we can hold them off," she said between ragged breaths. "What did you feel? What did you see?" Elizabeth's heart pounded as questions swirled in her mind like a tempest. Who had she been before this moment? And what tangled web had she stumbled into? "I saw something," she stammered, a chill snaking down her spine. "But I need to know more. I need to understand what's happening to us." Margaret nodded, determination reflecting in her eyes. "Then we follow the light. But hurry, it won't wait for us forever." As they stepped further into that radiant glow, the shadows roared in the distance, a visceral threat looming. What lay ahead beckoned with potential, yet the air trembled with the weight of their uncertain future. What cryptic truths awaited them within this sanctum? And would unlocking the mystery lead them to salvation or doom? Elizabeth and Margaret moved deeper into the pulsating glow, each step echoing with intensity. Light swirled around them, but the shadows lurked just beyond the threshold, snarling and howling in their frustration. Elizabeth's pulse matched the rhythmic thrum of the light, pushing her forward. "This feels alive," Margaret whispered, glancing over her shoulder. Fear darkened her eyes. "Like it knows us." "It does know us," Elizabeth replied, breathless. "Or at least, it knows what we're meant to uncover." The floor beneath them hummed, resonating with an ancient power. The walls, adorned with intricate carvings, seemed to whisper forgotten tales of triumph and tragedy. Elizabeth leaned closer, studying a panel that depicted figures bound in chains, reaching toward an unreachable sky. Her heart sank. Those chains looked eerily similar to the shadowy coils that had gripped her moments before. An unsettling thought filled her mind. Were they trapped in a cycle? Would they become just another part of the stories etched in stone? "Look!" Margaret pointed to a figure at the altar, an imposing statue shrouded in the very same light that had drawn Elizabeth, Indiana. But this was not just a statue, it felt like a guardian, a sentinel waiting for them to take the next leap. Without warning, the glow pulsed faster, flashing like a heartbeat. "It wants us to approach," Elizabeth exclaimed, instinctively stepping forward. "Wait. What if we're not ready?" Margaret hesitated, her voice trembling. "What choice do we have?" Elizabeth responded, the urgency thrumming in her veins. They were in the grip of something enormous. As they drew closer, an alarm sounded, echoing through the chapel, shrill and jarring. Elizabeth turned, dread sinking deep. The shadows erupted, swirling in a tempest of wrath, their forms twisting violently. They were being summoned like phantoms to follow their masters. "I can't," Margaret gasped, stumbling slightly. "This is wrong, Elizabeth. We need to turn back." But the light beckoned, a siren's call that no one could resist. "I need to see what this is," Elizabeth replied, gripping Margaret's arm. "We can't let fear decide our fate." Together then, Margaret steadied herself, resolve hardening, their hearts pounding like war drums, they approached the altar. The closer they got, the more the air crackled with energy. They reached out, hands brushing against the cool, luminous surface of the statue, and felt a surge of whispers crawl beneath their skin. "Welcome," a voice resonated, deep and antiquated. It seeped into their souls, igniting forgotten memories, surfacing emotions they thought buried. "You are the bearers of a legacy long concealed. The darkness that has plagued your family shall rise if you do not take action." "What do you mean?" Elizabeth's voice shook. "What must we do?" "Embrace who you are," the voice urged. "To defeat the shadows, you must first uncover the truth of your lineage. Only then can you wield the power of this light." A resounding crash echoed behind them. The shadows had gained ground, pouring like liquid night toward the altar. "They're coming!" Margaret cried, panic spilling from her eyes. "Let them come!" Elizabeth shouted, her voice an anchor in the storm. "We cannot retreat now. We have to know." The moment was heavy with choice. The energy from the altar intensified, coursing through her, pulling at her very essence. She closed her eyes, embracing the light around her. "Show me my heritage." Suddenly, visions exploded in her mind, locked secrets and ancestral traumas manifesting in vivid colors. A powerful figure from the past, her ancestor, rushed at her with a warning, words slipping through like sand in an hourglass: "Beware, treachery lies in the heart of light." The air thickened as the shadows screamed, erupting in an obsidian wave. Elizabeth fell to her knees, engulfed by the visions, while Margaret gasped for air beside her. The altar flared, the light shielded them momentarily. "Elizabeth! We have to act." A heartbeat passed, then the darkness roared again, eager for blood. Shadows spiraled around them, tightening their grip. What lay hidden in Elizabeth's past, waiting to awaken a power feared by the darkness? Would she rise to confront the shadows or be consumed by them? The weight of history hung in the air, poised for revelation as the battle drew ever closer. Would unlocking the secret save them, or would it shatter the fragile hope they clung to? Elizabeth knelt in the swirling chaos of light and shadow, her heart racing. The truth of her lineage echoed in her mind, haunting her with promises and threats. Dark memories collided with the present, painting a portrait of treachery and hidden strength. The shadows screeched as they encroached, threatening to swallow them whole. Elizabeth! Margaret's urgent voice snapped her back. We need to do something before it's too late. The vibrancy of the altar pulsed against the encircling darkness, a beacon guiding them toward their fate. I'm trying to remember. Elizabeth gasped, the weight of history pressing down on her. What are the steps? What must we uncover? Each heartbeat synchronized with the altar's rhythm, sending waves of energy through her. Suddenly, she recalled her ancestor's words, weaving visions of triumph and despair. A figure emerged from the dark void, an ancestor, powerful and regal, smiling with a knowing gaze. You have power, the shade whispered. But it is bound to blood. You must confront the truth that binds you. The shadows stopped their encroachment, momentarily recoiling, as if sensing her power awakening. Elizabeth's previous fear started transmuting into resolve, the darkness no longer an enemy but a part of herself. It held her lineage's pain, her struggles, the choices woven into the fabric of her fate. Remember. The voice urged. The legacy must be embraced. Darkness does not destroy, but reveals strength. Only through understanding can you wield it. Margaret's wide eyes filled with determination, urging Elizabeth forward. We can't let them win. Together. Elizabeth shouted, feeling the weight of her ancestor's essence blend into her resolve. With Margaret by her side, she stood, facing the dark tide that threatened to consume them. Show us. Elizabeth declared, extending her hands toward the altar. We are the bearers of our legacy. We are here to reclaim our power. The altar erupted with brilliance, a cascade of energy enveloping them both. Light surged from the depths of their souls, igniting the altar like the sun breaking through storm clouds. The shadows screeched, contorting as the illumination pushed back against their darkness. In that moment, clarity pierced her mind. Elizabeth visualized her bloodline, the alliances forged, the sacrifices made, the strength drawn from the darkest trials. And within that understanding lay her power, a promise forged through the ages. She embraced every fragment, uniting with her past. Embrace who you are. The voice of her ancestor rang clear, echoing through the chapel. You hold the potential to cleanse the shadows, to restore balance. Now. Elizabeth shouted to Margaret. We summon the light. The energies intertwined, radiating outward, bending the realm around them. As the shadows surged, Elizabeth and Margaret joined forces, their voices merging into one commanding crescendo. Waves of light pushed against the encroaching night, forcing it back, reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. Then, with one final push, an explosion of brilliance erupted. The shadows, creatures of fear and betrayal, screamed in anguish, disintegrating into wispy remnants of darkness. The air shimmered as sunbeams broke through the gloom, banishing the foreboding presence. As the last of the shadows vanished, silence enveloped the chapel. The energy in the air pulsed with renewed vigor. Elizabeth and Margaret stood together, the weight of their legacy shifting into a newfound purpose. What now? Margaret whispered, eyes wide with wonder. Now, Elizabeth replied, a soft smile playing on her lips, we face the future. She felt the resonating power in her veins, a tide of courage mixed with knowledge. We'll rebuild, Elizabeth assured. We'll reclaim what was lost, and we'll write our own story, one where shadows no longer have the power to dictate our fate. As they stepped back from the altar, the chapel's walls seemed to breathe with them, no longer a prison, but a sanctum. The flickering light held promises, the past was woven into the future, defining them anew, with each stride back into the world beyond. The weight of history shifted, no longer a burden but a foundation for a brighter tomorrow. Together, they would forge a new path, inviting others to join them as they embraced their identities, their truths, both light and dark together, and as they walked away from the altar, the sounds of a new dawn filled the air, a clear sky ready for the first light of day. The shadows had been cast aside, but their lessons remained, empowering Elizabeth and Margaret to rise. The new chapter awaited, glistening with the promise of hope and redemption. Elizabeth turned to her friend, determination lacing her words. Together, we'll show them what true power means. In the heart of history, Elizabeth I had redefined herself not merely as the Virgin Queen, but as a force to be reckoned with, a beacon whose legacy would illuminate and inspire generations. The past would no longer haunt her, it would guide her. They would not be silenced, and in that resilience, they embraced the dawn of new beginnings. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this shocking ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely must see this conclusion. Your engagement makes all the difference.